So one of the subscribers of this channel sent a video. It's called "The Truth About Feminism's Impact on Marriage and Men" by Janice Fiamingo. Okay, and it's from the channel Laura Howe. Laura Howe, How. So we're going to give it a listen, and should give us some pretty good insights. You know, the thing about feminism is that whether we like to say it or not, even though it has been successful in a lot of ways, you know, allowing women to be empowered, this new wave, this new form of feminism really has overtaken the mind and the psyche of women and society. And that's not in a good way. So let's give it a shot and see what we can find.
I once was certainly of the belief that feminism was a force for good, motivated by equality and unity. Janet, is that true?
Well, I used to think that as well, and I no longer do. One of the things I noticed when I started really listening to what feminists say about what they want and what they believe is that the terms love and cherish almost never come up, particularly when applied to men. And that was the thing that began to let me, after many years in which I called myself a feminist and I taught at various universities, and it began to strike me that even though all of the measurable goals of the feminist movement had clearly been attained, feminists didn't seem to be any happier about the state of the world. And in fact, it seemed to me that they were as angry or even angrier than they had ever been, very keen on lecturing men on toxic masculinity and everything else, very keen on telling men what they owed to women, which seemed to be everything. And many men were quite willing to try to give to women what they were demanding, but not at all keen in talking about what women owed to men, and certainly not interested in talking about what men had given to women over the centuries, why gender roles had developed as they did in times when the survival of the human race was much more challenging than it is today. And, not at all interested in talking about gratitude or in praising men for the changes in society and in the social order that men had been willing to give to women. So that lack of gratitude, that anger, that accusatory tone, all of those began to really turn me off. And I also finally, I think the sort of assertion of female moral superiority really got to me as well. It was as if no matter what the situation, it was impossible for feminists to admit that women ever did wrong. And also, of course, as I just said, impossible for them to admit that men ever did right.
And she's already cooking right here. It's impossible. And what men sum up in one word as accountability. Just take accountability. You never say thank you. You never give me my flowers. You never give me my kudos for what I've done. There was a man and people wanted to get on his case about it, but he was right. He said, if I decide as a man to shut all this down, I have the strength to shut all of it down. I have the power, the physical control. I can physically manipulate my environment to shut all this down. Now, was he talking about as himself? No. The male, the gender of male has enough power if men decided, because a lot of modern women like to talk about, oh, well, if I do this, then we can really get together and destroy the patriarchy and stuff like that. But if a man says, no, actually, I want this toxic masculinity that you speak of to continue. I want to be a criminal and to do women dirty, right? I want to do criminal things to women. They could do that. It would be terrifying, I would hope, for a lot of people, and somebody would stop it. But no, there's nothing that you as a woman could physically do. You'd have to take it. And so this whole thing of, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to stop you and we're not going to give you anything. We're going to talk you down and basically, like she said, this superiority complex of I'm better than you and I'm going to show you that I'm better than you. Now I'm in this position, and the man is like, we fought right alongside you to give this to you, to get this for you, so we can celebrate together. So why are you now trying to dunk on me as if I've never done anything for you?
And it began to strike me that feminism actually brought out the worst in women, exacerbating the qualities in feminine nature that are not conducive to social flourishing, and suppressing the qualities in female nature that are conducive to social flourishing, such as the empathy that we always hear about. Seems to me that feminism suppresses that. It makes women focus on grievance. It brings out the entitlement mentality that some women have. It, I think, exacerbates envy and discontent and anger. It leaches away loving kindness and softness and nurturing. And for all the talk of how women are the ones who care for the weak, it seemed to me that it takes away caring from women. And so I really began to question whether feminism was really what feminists said it was, whether it was really a movement for equality, because I couldn't see very much equality. I couldn't see any mutuality, any reciprocal commitment, any equal caring for men and boys. And I began to read more deeply into feminism, even going back to the very early years of the feminist movement, way back to Mary Wollstonecraft in 1792 and Elizabeth Cady Stanton at the Declaration of Sentiments in Seneca Falls in 1848. And I was struck there by the anger and the accusation and the conviction of female moral superiority. And so that's when I really began to just to question everything that I had believed.
How has it taken hold? Why is that not widely known is the next reasonable or sensible question as far as I can tell.
Yes, Laura. Well, I think that's the million-dollar question. And for one thing, I think the answer is that men have always cared about women's experience and women's safety and well-being, which contradicts the fundamental premise of feminism. And that's really, to me, the interesting contradiction at the heart of feminism, that it constantly cries out about injustice to women and makes claims about male indifference, male tyranny, male brutality. But if it were true, at the same time as it makes those claims, it is demanding change.
Well, to your point about men caring, men have daughters, men have mothers, men have nieces, sisters, wives, right? Partners, spouses, you name it. A man has a woman in his life somewhere. And so his natural instinct to protect always takes over. But when you're constantly being told, hey, you're not doing it right, get away, instead of, hey, this is how you should do it, it's always said in a disrespectful, degrading tone from the modern woman, from the radical feminist woman. It's always said in, why would you ever think like that? Why would you not think like me? Why would you not do it like I would do it? How dare you? You as a man have a small brain, you have a slow brain, and I don't expect you to know anything, so just get out of my presence. Modern women today have become very dismissive and very disrespectful in how they talk to men.
Now, if it were true that men were actually as feminists claim they are, it would be useless to make those demands because the men would not respond. And instead, feminists have repeatedly made various demands at the same time as they have made these claims about male tyranny, and their demands have been met repeatedly over and over again. I would encourage anyone who has doubts about anything I'm saying to go back and look at the Declaration of Sentiments, which I just mentioned. It's online. You can find it anywhere. And that was the document produced at the very first Women's Rights Convention held in the United States. And this was a gathering of men and women, 1848, over a weekend in July. And they produced this document in which feminists declared. It was modeled on the Declaration of Independence. And it was essentially a declaration of war against men in which these women poured out their fury at men. They said that the entire history of mankind was a history of repeated injury and usurpation on the part of man against woman, having as its direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her.
So during us trying to help you out, during us calling a meeting to have more help and more understanding, what these modern women respond by, because they're emotional, they're emotionally undisciplined and emotionally immature, no matter what they try to tell us, is we respond by going up there and completely unloading on men. Men say we're here to we're here to help. We're here to assist. And what you respond with doing is saying, "Oh, you guys are a piece of trash. Y'all are garbage. I would never want to be seen around you." I thought are we not here to try to help and try to listen and try to understand? So why are you attacking us as if we're the problem here?
Yeah.
And men signed that declaration admitting that that was true about, so right there, what kind of tyrant would would sign a document admitting that his had done nothing but tyrannize over women. And then in that document, there is a long list of claims and statements of objection by the women against the men about what men had allegedly done to women throughout history. And many of the statements are actually wrong. They are untruthful. And some of those women must have known that they were untruthful. One of the claims, for example, is that men had closed all avenues of education against women, closing all universities. That wasn't true. There were all sorts of, higher education institutions for women in the early 19th century. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the main author of the Declaration of Sentiments, had attended the Troy Seminary, which was intended to give women a comparable higher education to what her brothers would have. And Oberlin College, an extremely prestigious university, had opened in 1837. Some of the women present had attended American universities. So that was wrong. Many of the others, they said that women had no property rights in marriage. That was not true. States were enacting laws intended to protect women's property rights. There were all sorts of falsities in that declaration, and the conviction of male evil that breathes through that declaration is staggering. And yet men signed it. Men were interested in what women had to say. And I think that gets to the heart of why feminism has been so incredibly successful, that men do care very much about women. They do respond when women cry out in pain. And even they are willing to accept really terrible calumnies against them and still respond with sympathy rather than with the anger and the brutality that one would expect if they were anything like what feminists say. And so that is the thing that began to strike me as we went along, that feminists are gravely mistaken or outright dishonest about, in their description of the state of relations between men and women. It isn't, as they have said, that they do lie or at least exaggerate in their statements about that situation. And that what they are calling for, it seems to me, and actually achieving, is a world in which there is no reciprocity at all between men and women, and in which there is no equality, but in which everything is owed to women as women, and nothing is owed to men. Men owe women everything: deference, protection, self-sacrifice, generosity, support, encouragement, love. And I ask feminists this when I used to be on Twitter. I've kind of given it up lately, but I used to ask this: what do women owe men? Do they owe them anything? Any gratitude? Any caring? Any justice? Do women care about the issues that affect men? The fact that 95% of the prison population in the West is male? Do they care about the fact that 97% of workplace fatalities are male? Do they care about the fact that about 80% of suicides are male? Do they care about the fact that about 80% of the homeless are male? About 85% of addicts are male. 8 out of 10 homicides worldwide are male. 9 out of 10 deaths in police custody are male. Like, do they ever care about any of those things? No, they're talking about a gender pay gap that doesn't actually exist at all when you look at it, that exists only because men tend to work more overtime and put in more hours.
And here's the thing about what you're saying now. Now you're starting to talk about facts. You start talking about the reality of the situation. You're moving from how you feel in a world of delusion, right? Which, going back to the point, men sat there and they listened to what the women said, even though they were lying. And when women get up on here talking about believe all women, they sat up there and listened to them and then say, yeah, we did do all of those things. Nobody fact checked. Nobody said, wait a minute. I'm not 100% sure that we did that. Nobody said that. They just said, you know what? I didn't do that, but we'll take your word for it. I don't know anybody that would do that. I don't know that anybody that has done that. I wouldn't do that. I haven't done that, but I'll take your word for it. Let's sign this declaration of whatever it is. And now moving forward, we still have to live in this world of delusion where it just gets worse and worse. That's what this type of stuff is doing. It's worse and worse. The title, once again, is The Truth About Feminism and its impact on marriage and men. But we should also be talking about, which I think she is, which is bigger than marriage, which is bigger than men, and its impact on society. I can't remember her name, but she just did something recently. Helen Andrews just did something recently on it where she sat down. She's done it actually multiple times where she's done a presentation herself. I think she's published some articles or maybe even a book about it. And she's gone on and done some interviews on the topic of how feminism has affected society, how men and women are losing. We always talk about the patriarchy and how the patriarchy is destroying men and women, and it's not good for men either. But modern women don't want to talk about, radical feminists don't want to talk about the effects of feminism and how it's extremely detrimental to society. This ain't no, oh, well, because we have feminism, more people are turning gay. Nobody care about that. We can move that off to the side. Don't nobody worry about that stuff. Feminism and the way that modern women feel, they begin to push men and what men do out of the way. It no longer becomes important. It no longer is the backbone of society. I listen to a lot of stuff about history and World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, the Korean War, and you hear about all of these horror stories that men had to go through, even when they didn't agree. But they did it because they felt like it was required. They felt like it was necessary, right? And how it becomes, oh man, if, there's a lot of questionable decisions that were made, but if we hadn't done it, then imagine the situation that we would have been in today, right? But we do it to keep the backbone of society straight, strong, and moving forward. In the future, we can correct these things, but for right now, we got to do what we got to do by any means necessary. Modern women come back. Radical feminism comes back and says, well, you didn't have to do this. I don't know if you should have done that, which, maybe you should do that. But when you get into there's a lot of stuff that you should and should not do. And modern women sit back and armchair quarterback. They sit back and Monday morning quarterback what needs to happen in war. Society is war. Life is war. And sometimes in life and in society, you got to do it and you got to get it the best way you know how. Modern women sit back and judge while doing nothing. They'll sit back and judge what a man has done and say that doesn't make the grade, while purchasing a pack of bacon he just put up, while purchasing some sausage that he just put in the store. Hey, we got another shipment of sausage. And not only is it pork sausage, it's the maple sausage like you like. It's different. Oh, we put chives and onion in this one. Oh, you guys are unethical. Now let me grab another package of this Philadelphia cream cheese, these bagels, so I can wipe it down. And let me go ahead and grab these avocados so I can have some avocado toast, or get a little snazzy with it, get a little jazzy with it. Make me some avocado, make me an avocado bagel with bacon, with cheese, everything bagel, and my own seasonings and my own blend that you made as a man. But we're going to sit up here and tell you what you don't need to do and what you need to do. And oh man, these men, I hate these men with the bag on your arm at a farmer's market on a Saturday afternoon, getting a cinnamon roll that a man allowed you the supplies to make. Modern women will sit up here and talk about what you do and don't need to be doing while walking through. I got this sourdough bread from the farmer's market. It was $15 per loaf, and it's not even a regular loaf. But go off about what men are and are not providing
than women do. And so, there's so much dishonesty and so much mean-spiritedness in the feminist movement that I don't understand how anybody who actually cares about equality can, commit to it or can stand to listen to it. And, I'm older now. I grew up in the 1970s when feminism was, at least the second wave of feminism was going strong. I experienced nothing in my life but kindness, generosity, and support from my male teachers, mentors, friends, etc. I saw lots of female role models. I was taught almost entirely by teachers, by women. The teaching profession had already been pretty thoroughly feminized. I encountered many professors who were female at university, and certainly all of my professors assumed that as a woman, if I had the intelligence and the dedication, I would be able to achieve anything I wanted to. So as far as I could tell personally, by 1980, there was absolute equality in my society. I grew up in Canada. So to witness the last 45 years of repeated hectoring and complaining and demanding and women's marches and walks and this and that and women on panels talking about how more needs to be done, more government grants, more special programs, more university set-asides, more jobs just for women, it just strikes me as ludicrous that anybody could take it very seriously. Now, at the same time, I'm not saying that women don't have issues, of course, and men care about those issues. But I think
Yeah.
it is long past time to stop talking as if women have been oppressed and to start talking about how we can work together as men and women to build a good society, and a society that is good for raising children, which seems to be the most important thing that we could have as a society. And I don't think we have that now.
And that's a good segue into their second topic, or the second question, which I think they're about to go into, is men are saying, okay, we got you. We're listening. We want to hear what you have to say. We've done that. Now let's move on and see if we can work together. And what you continue to hear from modern women is I don't want to work with you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be around you. I actually hate you. But the man is the person causing the problem.
It's interesting to me to perhaps talk to you about the all-pervasive nature of feminism and how it is playing out almost all over the place.
Really remarkable to me, and I mostly I hear from men, and ever since I started giving talks and having my video series, I used to get a lot of emails from men who had been destroyed in divorce, men who had been the victims of false accusations. Men who had been passed over for jobs that they knew they were qualified for. And I was really struck by a number of things. One, that they, although some of them were angry at what had been done to them, that they were not at all dismissive of women in general. Like this notion that there is a pervasive misogyny in our society that we must continually address. I've never seen that. I have not met a misogynistic man. I know I'm not saying that there aren't any at all, but that is not the general nature of men.
Agreed.
So I think that plays a role in the fact that men don't stand up for themselves. Men tend to have greater empathy for women than they have for other men. And that's a big problem in this quest now to right the world, I think. And lots of psychologists have studied that. Women have greater in-group empathy. So if you present a scenario to a group of women that involves a man and a woman, it will tend to elicit more empathy for the woman from that group. And the same is true of men. So this is people, men's advocates call this the gender empathy gap. And it is difficult to get people to care about men, both men and women. And so that's a problem. And it seems to me also that the fact that more and more boys are being raised in homes without fathers, and the fact that men are being really cleaned out of many professions, such as teaching. So, for example, a boy... Yes, psychology, therapy, social work, just so many of the helping professions are dominated by women, often feminist women with a grievance against men. And so boys encounter very few role models often. They encounter a world in which they're told that women matter more.
And this type of thing is exactly what men are complaining about. She mentioned, surprisingly, men don't resent. Not usually, they're not resenting women. They're saying, hey, this is what happened to me. Well, are you upset about it? I'm upset about what happened to me. But I don't resent all women. I just feel like I got a raw end of the deal. I just felt like it should have been fair. What do you hear about? What do you hear from women, from men that have gone through a divorce? I just feel like I got the raw end of the deal. I mean, she took my kids away from me, man. Like, I don't see my kids but maybe once or twice a month. Right? I might see my kid every other weekend because that's the way she set it up. And the judge thinks that I'm a bum, but I have to still pay child support full time and I never get to see my kids. I'm paying for something I never get to see. That's not fair, man. That's not right. I'm thinking of Lauren, the advocate, where she talked about her husband had her husband's child, her stepson. They had to fight for several years to get 50-50 custody over him because the mom wouldn't give it. So a man is having to pay for things and buy into things that he has no access to, that he gets no benefit from. And society as a whole isn't allowing it because we should feel sorry for the woman. And that's not right. Why do I, as the man, always get the raw end of the deal? Can it not be fair? Can it not be equal? Why are you always siding with her? Why are you always putting everything in her, basically slanted, and it favors her? That's not fair.
And that we should direct most of our emotional energy and our attempts to make changes towards women. And I think there's a vast demoralization of men as a result. It's almost as if, we've decided collectively that the only real role men have is to work to better women's lives. And boys get that message from very early on in school. They may get it from their mothers if they have feminist mothers. And then, so they're told they have to apologize. They have to bear the guilt, allegedly, of centuries or at least decades of oppressive actions by other men, that they have to somehow pay in their person. And so they need to take a step back and let their sisters come forward. And of course, their sisters are going to do a much better job of running the world. There are going to be no more wars, no more poverty, no more conflict, no more inequality when we have all women leaders. And I think that demoralization translates for a lot of men into passivity. A lot of men think, well, maybe it's true. So I am going to step back. What can I do? I'm denied the opportunity to provide and provide for my family. I'm denied the opportunity to step forward and use my masculine inventiveness and creativity to make the world a better place. I'm told that the only thing I can do really is be quiet and support women. And so we're really in a crisis, I think, of empathy for men.
Yeah. So what do we do is the question, because it cannot go on like this. I mean, I see if we think about children as I think of your role as an adult in this world, that one of the main roles that you have is to be guardians for our children. So I think of studying as I have child development and human development more broadly. What you find out is that the best thing that you can ever provide for your children is a loving home, a home that mum and dad are present in, that there is respect and warmth between the two of them, that they have this deep sort of reverence for one another, that they work collaboratively, that there is pleasure and positivity, that's the sort of landscape, that's the environment that children are raised in. So if there's any kind of ideology that serves to destroy that faith in one another, that collaborative working bond, that to me is something to be very worried about, to question seriously. It doesn't make any sense to me to foster attitudes or ideas that would have either feeling less faith in the other. That would destabilize. That would destabilize not only society, but it would destabilize us as individuals if we were to have this paranoid, suspicious view that the other sex wanted harm to come to us.
And she's talking about harm and either being suspicious of the other. That's what's happening. There was a woman, Dr. Bryan, talking about, well, I want the prenup to be like this, and it better be written like this, and it's got to be done like this, so I can make sure that I come out right, and my father will be turning over in his grave if I didn't get this and this and then whatever and whatnot. And it's not going to be a percentage. It's going to be a lump sum. It's going to be a dollar amount where I get this. Basically, give me my payment up front. I don't want no royalties. I want my payment up front. I want you to give me everything up front. I want you to guarantee, make sure that I'm good. I'll do all of this stuff for you. I'll do this, and this. Within reason. Boom. There's a caveat. Within reason. And you see those little digs at a man. Well, you might be asking me to do something that I can't do. Most men ain't going to ask you to do something that you cannot do. They're not going to force themselves on you. And we're talking statistics now. We're talking about facts. We're talking about reality now. They're not going to force themselves on you. Well, if it comes to that, I don't want my man doing this, and this. Basically, once again, you stick subtle things in there to say, well, I maintain control of the situation. And if the situation should go sideways and he should leave me, well, what's the stats? What's the statistics on him leaving you? Oh, wait, not very high. 70% of the time y'all leave. 90% of the time, and you're a doctor, right? 90% of the time, somebody who's educated is going to leave the man. So what are we actually talking about? Once again, it's always slanted, for the most part, for the majority of the time, in a woman's favor. When does the man begin to get equal treatment?
Because I would think that a woman who had her eyes open and who had a basic common sense and was willing to listen to men would be able to hear that message. It seems, it is overwhelmingly clear to me. That's how men respond when women talk about their issues. And so why are women not willing to hear that good news of men's concern and men's empathy and men's desire to protect women and men's desire to create a society in which women can flourish and be happy? And I think, unfortunately, it's because they don't want to hear it, because they don't see it as good news. What they see is that is a challenge to their victim story. And I think for many, many women who have been seduced by feminist ideology, and this doesn't even mean that they have to declare themselves feminist or even have read feminist literature. It means that they simply have to have been part of our culture as it has been over the last 50 years. And I think many women take deep, exhilarating pleasure in seeing themselves as victims. That becomes their identity. And, like psychologists have done work on this. There were some Israeli researchers who investigated the victim personality. And that is one in which one, has a deep need to see oneself as a victim. And that develops, just, I guess, from being in the culture. And we all, of course, have our personal pains in our life. And so I think it is always a temptation to believe oneself a victim. And it may have nothing to do with any actual experience of victimization. They make that clear in the study. So, and I think it's something that women are particularly prone to. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but it kind of makes sense that women evolved over time to be hyper aware of threats to their safety, threats to the safety of their children. It makes sense that men would have evolved to be hyper aware of what women are saying about the threats to themselves and their children. So I think it is a particular temptation of women to feel themselves under threat and then to think of themselves as victims. In our society in particular, a victim is somebody who is very authentic. We tend to listen to victims. We tend to give them a lot of respect. We call them survivors. We praise them for their courage, all those sorts of things. And so it's a quite pleasant experience to proclaim one's victimhood. And along with it comes moral authenticity and purity. The victim is not responsible for anything she's done wrong, for any failures in her life. It's somebody else's responsibility. So she is unimpeachable and pure. And then what happens as a result of that is that every experience gets filtered through the victim lens. And so then that becomes all you see. It's quite a satisfying worldview. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I found it very exhilarating when I was a university student to believe in the collective victimization of women. And what it does then is it leaches empathy away. You do not feel any empathy for those that you see as, not me.
And I like the point that she made about, empathy in particular. You have to have empathy towards me as the victim. I'm the victim. I'm perfect. I'm innocent. I'm pure. So anything that I've done, any stupidity, anything wrong that I might have contributed to the situation, ultimately I'm the victim. And you have to believe everything that I say. And that's why modern women believe that they can say things recklessly. If you'll notice, a lot of these women, they'll say the whole story. They'll be sometimes they leave things out, or what they'll try to do is they'll frame the story in a way that makes them the victim. But then when you listen and you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There was this video that I think I saw Emily King reacting to, and then I think I saw a couple of other people reacting to it. One of the guys, Marvin, on Instagram a lot, black guy, dreads, Really funny dude. Really funny dude. He teaches men how to, you know, have more confidence. So I appreciate that from him. And there's another guy. I think it's Right Corner or something like that. Right Corner IG or something like that. He's an idiot. He's pretty funny. I say that not to be disrespectful, but you know, he'll some women will have like a shirt on or something like that, or like a bra, and it's revealing, and he'll say, "Hey, I fixed it for you." Like in the next photo, he'll put on an appropriate shirt on her or something like that with AI. So he's pretty funny. But they reacted to a woman who was in her 30s saying that, you know, I seem to scare men away, or men don't want me, or something like that. And here's the reasons why. And she started listing off reasons why. I think she listed maybe like 15 reasons in total, but 13 of the 15 were things that she was actually bragging about herself. I'm educated, you know, I've got my own car, you know, stuff like that that nobody would care about, right? Stuff that people would not be intimidated by. And then she starts saying, I take trips every month, and I'm expensive. It's like, well, there it is right there. There it is right there. That's probably why you're still single. And this is what modern women do. They try to put all of the fluff and all of the presentation. Well, should I be wrong because I help out the homeless when it's freezing cold and I give my last? Why do I get persecuted for that? Nobody's persecuting you for that. People are persecuting you because you decided after you got angry because a homeless person didn't want the chicken noodle soup. They decided, hey, you know, I'm not really hungry right now. I don't want that chicken noodle soup. Plus, chicken noodle soup makes me kind of gassy. Do you have any other type of soup that I might have? I'm sorry that seem like I'm complaining. Oh, how dare you complain? How dare you not be grateful? You're homeless. You should. And then you splash the chicken noodle soup, the hot chicken noodle soup in their face. So people are getting on you because you disrespected the homeless person when you could have said, oh, I'm sorry. Talk to her down on the end and maybe she can do something for you. But, you know, today we have chicken noodle soup. But like I said, talk to her down on the end and see what we can do for you. Thank you so much for coming by. Instead of doing that, you decided I'm going to take matters into my own hands and I'm going to be disrespectful. But at the end of the day, when that homeless person smacked you in the face, oh, what you're going to frame it as, oh, I try to go out there and help the homeless and they smack me in the face. And, you know, it shouldn't matter if I tell them to get out of my face. And the reason now, because y'all might see this clip, the reason I splashed chicken noodle soup in her face is because I felt she talked to me in a way that, no, ma'am. You disrespected her first and she disrespected you back. That's what it is. These modern women continue to tell on themselves about the wrong things that they're doing in society. And they expect people to say, oh, well, you had a reason to do that. You had a reason to cheat on him. You had a reason to do everything that you were doing. And we should take your side over his.
You will have empathy for others in your victim group, but certainly not for those that you perceive as privileged, oppressive, etc. No empathy at all. And you even feel quite justified in taking revenge on those people. You think they should suffer. You certainly don't care about their suffering. And a just world to you may seem like one in which they experience what you think your group has experienced. And that's exactly what feminism produces. And I've heard that so many times from women when I've talked about, you know, men's issues, boys, as you said, suicidality.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's staggering to hear about how much young men and boys are suffering and feeling adrift and feeling unwanted in our society and are measurably falling behind and have been for decades. Any responsible study shows that, you know, if you look at university participation, if you look at employment, if you look at real wages, if you look at job status, any women born after 1978, I believe it is, have been outpacing men, you know, every year. And I've given talks about this, and I've had women stand up at the end of it and say, and tell a victim story and say, you know, when I was working in 1986, a man put his hand on my shoulder and told me that I should be at home having children. You know, something like that. That's an actual story that somebody said.
I can imagine.
And I just thought, well, for one thing, who cares?
Yeah, totally.
That is not systemic oppression. But, you know, to use that, and what she meant by that is, I suffered, and therefore I don't have to care about the suffering of boys and men. And I said to that person, I don't believe that collective vengeance is a way to build a just society. But I think a lot of women, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, have so deeply absorbed the victim mentality that they are not interested in hearing the good news that men care about them. They prefer to imagine a world in which they are perennially heroic victims fighting back against oppression. And so that's a big problem. And I don't know how really to overcome that except to, I mean, I would like to have feminism recognized as the hate ideology that it
Yeah.
really is, and for it to be discredited and for it to be taken out of the schools altogether, for it to be made clear to both women and men that we are not going to build social programs based on a hate ideology in which one group of people is seen as less deserving of love and compassion and more deserving of anger, scorn, and punishment for the alleged sins of their forefathers.
And really, honestly and truly, we can throw in, once again, accountability. It's easier for me to sit up here and say, well, I did it because of this. And the big thing with a lot of modern women is the intent. Well, I didn't mean it like that. Or I didn't know. I had no clue. I can't be held responsible for the things that are out of my control. How would I have ever known? They want a man, when they plan the dates, to take everything into consideration. Take all of it into consideration. Know what I like, know what I dislike, know what the weather is going to be, know what I like to smell like, and know the scents of what I might wear. Know my whole perfume collection, so you can recommend to me what I'm going to wear, cologne wise or perfume wise, excuse me, what type of makeup I should wear, light, heavy, what's the occasion, that sort of thing, what dress I should wear, or if I should wear a dress. All of this stuff has to be thought out by a man from top to bottom. But if a man says, well, now, okay, I need you to think of everything that might go into a relationship or running or managing a household. I need you to think of that from top to bottom. Oh, well, I'm not the only one in this relationship. I shouldn't have to do this. And it's always trying to get themselves off the hook for something that they should have known, for something that they should have been aware about. But it's all about, well, I didn't intend to have that happen. I didn't mean to have that happen. I knew. There's another one. I knew, but I didn't fully understand. And this to get the bobbing head, when you understand and you get this and you get into a deeper meaning of things, that this is what's going to happen. And you don't really, really sleep, but then you don't really know. That's what they do to avoid accountability. You knew it was happening. You knew what was up, and you went and did what you wanted to do anyway. And you were thinking, because I am a woman, I can get away with this. There's a lot of modern women that do that. They think and they go ahead and do something and they say, oh, well, because I'm a woman, nobody's going to really hold me to it. I'm going to be the victim at the end of the day, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. Men are going to feel sorry for me, and they're going to come to my rescue. And when they don't, that's when I'll start talking about, where are all the good men? How come men don't help? They don't make them like they used to. But I forget that I've been bashing men for 6-7 years now, talking about how much of a terrible person they are, talking about I choose the bear. And y'all act like men are just going to die off within 6 or 7 years. But that man, it's a funny thing about it, that man saw your video 6 or 7 years. And now when you're crying for help 6 or 7 years later, he's like, well, what happened to the bear that you said that you wanted to be involved with? What happened to the bear that you said you was safer around? Now you're looking at me 6 or 7 years, well, that time passed and this. No, you've still been saying the same stupid stuff for the past 6 or 7 years, and you still saying the present, so ain't nothing changed. You're out here talking reckless, and when a man holds you to what you said, you want to get mad and scream the patriarchy and misogyny. It's you that has done a lot to ruin society as it is. Instead of just taking accountability and saying, you know what, it's time for me to stand up and to realize that I'm a part of the problem too. I should have done some things. I should have said some things differently. And here's what you have in two women right here doing that exact same thing. So I appreciate you for standing up and saying, well, I could do better. I see this in my sons, and I'm trying to teach them a little bit better. Hopefully a lot of other modern women follow your lead on this.
But unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon, because I think feminism is still held in high regard by a lot of people. Surveys seem to show that more and more women do identify themselves as feminists, and even women who don't, I think, have absorbed the general mindset that women are owed more than men in our society. Even conservative women often seem to have this notion that everything is owed to them, and they owe very little because of their. So it's difficult, and one of the routes that I think people sometimes go is to try to convince women that feminism hasn't been good for them. And although that's not really the way that I tend to want to, I don't want to always have to appeal to female self-interest, but if that's the way to go, well, it certainly has been the case that women report in decreased happiness and decreased life satisfaction, and that's been happening since the 1970s. So that both in relation to earlier generations of women and in relation to men and how men report their life satisfaction, women are becoming less and less satisfied with their lives as they become more and more feminist. So that has to say something about what it's doing to women, both psychologically and in their daily lives.
It does. It's interesting, if I may share, as a practicing therapist working with people for nearly 30 years, I have to say that one of my least favorite presenting issues is that of the victim, when it's entrenched within the personality. It's very difficult to work with somebody who has that personality type, because it's difficult to get them to take responsibility for their behavior.
Right.
So I do wonder if you might be right on the money with that one, Janice, because then it's almost like you're off the hook, aren't you? You don't have to, because caring is hard. I mean, caring for other people requires huge amounts of time and energy and effort, doesn't it? Whether it's your children, your dog, or your spouse, you actually have to do many things for people if you actually care about their well-being. So I do wonder if it is a reason, not that people will perhaps be conscious of it, because I guess if you were truly conscious of what you were doing, you'd be ashamed of yourself. Because I think if you joined the dots and acknowledged to yourself, perhaps one of the reasons that I'm behaving this way is because I don't want to do the things that ought to be done, because they're hard, and I'd rather just sit here playing Candy Crush Saga and whatever it is that people are doing. So I do think it might be that, and so I don't know whether appealing to women's better nature, or whether it's more effective perhaps to just keep saying this is an atrocious way to exist. That we are supposed to take care of one another. Yeah. I do think that's an essential aspect of a life well lived, and it's perhaps an aspect of real maturity, is that you understand that whilst you're here, you're supposed to do the very best that you can by others. That's good for you. It's good. It's not just obviously good for the world and good for other people, but it's good for you too. So I think calling it out as a rather despicable stance might be perhaps at least as effective as trying to appeal to women's better nature.
That's a very good point, and I do think that gets at the other aspect of the problem, and that is that I'd say since the advent of the second wave of feminism in the 60s, let's say, but probably starting much before that too, the notion of happiness has changed, in that, classically, the ancient Greeks, the early Christians, their idea of happiness was what you've just described. It was a life of virtue. It had everything to do with pursuing ethical conduct based on reason, self-denial, and self-knowledge. Yes. Yeah. And I think we've completely lost that, partly as a result of the loss of the role of religion in the public sphere. Yeah. Interestingly, though, I don't think men have lost it. I think most men, whether they are themselves good or bad, still know what a good man is. They have a pretty clear idea of who a good man is, what a good man does. A good man, of course, he protects and provides for his family, but he also pursues justice in the world. He defends the weak. He defeats evil. That we still have a very clear sense of what goodness looks like in a man. Now, feminists might say, well, it should look the same in a woman, but I don't think our history shows that to be true. Traditionally, certainly, virtue looked a little bit different in a woman. There were women warriors and women who stepped out to defeat evil in the world. But in general, the sphere of female virtue was in the home, and it had to do with the virtues of loyalty and loving kindness and nurturing of children and being a helpmeet to one's husband and being chaste. And, it had to do with particular feminine virtues.
Once again, thank you for the video. Thank you for the inspiration. We have a lot to do. We have a lot to learn. And once again, I don't think there's a man out there saying, well, I don't have any part of this. I'm perfect. There's nothing that I need to change. There's a lot of men out there that say, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I should have done X, Y, and Z. And they just wish somebody would listen to, hey man, I know I did wrong. I know I should have done X, Y, and Z, but man, come on. Like I shouldn't be the only one with the issues here. And once again, that's something that I had an issue with. I had a problem with, in past relationships. I was like, hey man, I know I did the wrong thing, but I had a part in this, but how come I'm the only one that's getting reprimanded? How come I'm the only one that's getting disciplined? I went and talked to my dad about it. I would talk to my mom about it. Yeah, I know you had a problem. You had a point here, and you were right here, but you didn't have to do that. And, I would have talks with them about it and say, well, yeah, you did a little bit too much here. And so you have somebody in your life that helps you to, even though they side with you or they understand where you're coming from, they'll say, yeah, you had a point here, but this is what you need to correct, right? And so, yeah, if you get that right, don't worry about them. You get that right, I think you'll be okay. And that's what men have to focus on a lot of times versus modern women, where they're like, well, I need to continue to do this over here and not focus on the wrong that I did. I need to keep being more of me, more of myself, more of this divine feminine, versus saying, okay, in order for me to be more of myself, I have to understand that this is one of my weaknesses, and I have to figure out how to manage it or eliminate it. I have to figure out how to do something about it. And when I continue to manage and start fixing these types of things, I become a better version of me. And that divine femininity, that I was talking about, I can reach that and attain that because I'm a better version of myself. I'm more in tune with myself because I know my strengths and my weaknesses. And when I know my strengths and my weaknesses and I embrace them and I understand them, then I can pick somebody better because I know this person is going to compliment me. And I know when somebody asks me, so what is a challenge for you? I can figure out how to phrase it and say, well, I could be better at X, Y, and Z. I could also be better at, A, B, and C, and 1, 2, 3, right? And I'm working on that. I've gone to this and I've done that, and whatever it is that you've done, you don't have to give them your whole life story. But a lot of times men will hear you and they'll say, okay, well, she's doing something about it. I appreciate that. Modern women don't be doing anything about anything. They be trying to, like I said, lean into their strengths, which they think is going to be their divine femininity. Basically, I'm more feminine because I'm leaning into who I am. One phrase that you'll hear them say is, I'm unapologetically me. I'm myself to the nth degree, right? This is just who I am, and I'm never changing for anybody. That's pretty stupid. You need to correct some things. But modern women don't want to hear that because, who would I be? You'd be somebody that is self-aware and learns how to do the right thing by yourself and others. So anyway, like I said, thank you to the person who sent this to me. It's a ever-going conversation. It's always an interesting topic. And I'm hoping that we can find some common ground on this issue.